Good morning and welcome to the AI Agent Collective. This morning we are joined by Liezel Ras and Raynardt Lues. They're going to be talking through some interesting points around getting a bond, wealth, and investments. So from my side, a very warm welcome to you. I think property investment, rather, still remains a massive point for people. But it's still riddled with complexity, uncertainty. But you gave me the impression the other morning when we met at an EXP breakfast that you are highly energetic, highly passionate about it, and you want to take the pain and complexity away from people's access to finance. So Liezel, without further ado, tell us a little bit more about yourself. I know you've had a long history in this space, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you, Jeff, and thank you for having me. I've been in the industry for going on 20 years. I'm an accountant. And yes, I grew up in a home where my mom was an estate agent for 38 years. Had a passion for putting people in property since I was a little girl. And I could never understand why our domestic had to live in a shack and why my mom could sell properties to other people from brick and mortar. So when I graduated, my paths crossed with a guy that was in home loans. And yeah, I started in home loans and combining the passion of both. And up until today, I've got a passion in assisting clients from all walks of life to become homeowners.
Beautiful. Raynardt?
So a brief history. I'm an accountant. I've got my own practice and I started assisting clients in obtaining finance through the use of Liezel. And after structuring all the self-employed, getting them right, I saw that, okay, this is doable, and I started doing it for myself. So I've started investing in property in that space for about 3 years and there's space in it to improve, obviously, but we really do know how the game works. And never do this alone because, again, if it wasn't for people like Liezel in my life, I wouldn't have been able to do it myself. But I do see synergy, and yeah, we scaled quite a bit of a business in a short space of time using a few simple principles.
Thank you. So us as estate agents, I think our main goal is to try and create value for our customers. And when we initially met, Liezel, what stuck with me was that you run a tight ship. You have a team on hand that takes away all the hacks around getting finance, approval, all the complexity. Once we got a lead, we reach out to you. Your team kind of takes over, which is incredibly exciting. But also what's incredibly exciting for me was to hear that although solo entrepreneurs and self-employed people might have the know-how and the funds, it's difficult for them to sometimes access the funds. So that was a hugely important angle for me because I come from the entrepreneurial space and I want to really market to the entrepreneurs out there. So do you want to tell us a little bit more about your team and how you make it less of a hack?
Okay, perfect. I've got a team of admin that assists us, our agents and our clients, to guide them from the word go to ask the right questions. So when my team speaks to a client and it's a first-time home buyer, they will guide the client and make the process, explain the process, and make it easy for them to understand that we're there to help and guide them. We collect all their documents, make sure we structure the deal in the best possible way for approval. Then we submit to the financial institutions where the client qualifies to submit to. And my job is to, first of all, to get the client an approval, to assist the agent in getting feedback every day, and then also to play the different banks off against each other to make sure that our client gets the best rate for their longest term of investment. And that's the benefit of having a home loan specialist and working with them, is to guide you to understand the process and that it's not so complicated. And anyone earning an income is in a position to be able to qualify for a home loan. And then from our side, we do all the paperwork. We deal with the banks. We know the products. We know where to apply them. And we know what to give the bank to make sure we get you the best deal.
Awesome. So if you're watching this podcast, you would like some assistance, you can use the link that I've pinned below. There you can engage with my AI seller advisory tool. Also reach out via email and I will gladly connect you to Liezel and we can get you that bond hassle-free. Right, Liezel, which I probably neglected to mention, works for the great company of Betterbonds. So, Liezel, I suppose my next question would be why Betterbonds and not a traditional bank? I think we not an indictment on traditional funding models, but the fact that you have a team that's accountable and there's feedback, which is, I think, in my limited time in real estate, I've heard that feedback in the industry is shocking. So that's something I really want to focus on. And I believe you've got a really cool sort of flow of communication. You told me earlier your day starts at 3 a.m. So give us a little bit of an insight into that.
Okay, so from communication, I think in every level of life is a problem in any relationship. That is where problems exist. So from our side, understanding that the client, it's an emotional decision. It's a stressful process. So every morning I give feedback on a voice note to my client, my agent of where the deal is exactly tracking. They can hear what institution is currently offering them, where we're tracking in the process. The agent knows that the valuators will be in contact. And once we've got approvals at the banks, the client also hears what we're doing in the background, taking one bank to the other bank, not only negotiating discounted interest rates, but there's additional benefits from certain banks with regards to discount on bond registration fees and so forth. So it's a combined package that myself and my team orchestrates at the back, seamless for the client. The agent knows they're in good hands. That's where the agent's money lies. And also at the end of the day, for the client to understand, why are you using a bond originator? The value prop of a bond originator, our services are absolutely for free. Unfortunately, the bankers these days are not trained in home loans only. They don't understand all the criteria and all of that in depth. And not only do we offer them the option that we do the paperwork, we make sure we apply the products that they can benefit from, but we go to different institutions and we do all of that on behalf of the client to make sure at the end of the day they get the results. My power lies in my team to make sure that doesn't matter where I am on a meeting, it's always being managed, the leads are being processed, they are well equipped with the knowledge to understand what documents we need, and that causes a lot of confusion with clients because if you want to apply online, they'll ask for one pay slip. When you come to us and you're earning overtime, in order for a bank to consider variable income, most of the banks want the variable income to be earned for 6 months consistently. So if you only supply one pay slip, it affects your application because we'll only work on your basic salary. And that is where my team assists the client to say, but that's why we need those documents. That's why I need a lease agreement. And communication and guiding them the whole process through.
So I actually want to come in from the side here. Me being on the receiving end of what her and her team does. Every morning at 5, I get my feedback and updates on transactions. And that puts me in a position where, argument's sake, stocks limited, you don't find property that's within your parameters all the time. But if you do get a deal, you need to be prepared to take it on. But sometimes those deals bundle up and then you get 6 or 7 at one space in time. And then having that feedback of knowing where you're standing gives you a power now to action on. It empowers you to make that decision on, say, listen, let's leave this deal or take this deal because I know my facility is still open or I'm close to getting my disposable income now spent. And that's what that constant feedback does. And I've now lived a life with her for almost 3 years, and there hasn't been a day where I've missed my feedback. And so first thing in the morning, I know exactly where my property portfolio stands, and it again empowers me to make the right decision if the agent brings me a decent deal. And I have been in a position where I had to say, sorry, not now, still waiting. And or when it was at a stage, she said, like, listen, okay, facility's open, we now need to eat it again. So there's that interaction, and we'll get to it a bit later on. But surrounding yourself with the right people, again, if you don't have that people in your corner, you won't be able to do it.
So cool.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that. So that wasn't even planned, guys. So I had a rock star in Liezel. It's very seldom that you meet someone with such great passion. When she enters a room, it hits you like a freight train. But at the same time, we get a testimonial. He is an entrepreneur that doesn't have the time to deal with life's hacks and the complexities of getting paperwork done. So I think having a testimonial straight off the bat is really rewarding, and I think it gives the people out there confidence. So just to bring you into the conversation, Raynardt, what is your view on, would you still regard investment as your primary route to financial freedom, or does it depend on the deal? Because a lot of people, there's still a lot of schools of thought out there that you might take a property as an investment, but if it's not giving you the expected return, is it really a good investment?
Okay, so I want to take it a bit back. We first off need to start off with one, what do you want to achieve? What's your plan? There's this great quote in Alice in Wonderland: if you do not know where you're going, then every direction leads you there. So if you take that into consideration, you first off need to plan it. Where are you heading towards? And then you make a decision about your path. In my world, I was exposed to Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad, Poor Dad at a very, very early age, and I fell in love with property. So property is part of my passion. I then came across Grant Cardone and was influenced by them even further. And my journey took me to a place where I got aligned with people in the property market. So we renovate our own properties. We get to sell them. We get to source them. So I've got this whole network set up that now feeds this passion of mine. So I decided at a very young stage where I want to go to, and that gave me the foothold to build my trial balance, because I knew I had to use the banks at this stage. Actually, Robert Kiyosaki said in his book that you need to understand the trial balance before you even attempt this. That's why I studied accounting. That's literally the guide that got me into it, and that eventually. Now answering your question where you say, is it a good investment? Again, if equity is your thing, go for equity. If property is your thing, go for property. Having a balance, not all your eggs in one basket, most definitely. Hedging your risk against different assets, definitely. If you're in a market where you get capital growth, investing in a property that doesn't have a positive cash flow might still be worth it, but there's opportunity cost you need to consider. Otherwise, going into areas where you don't have any capital growth, you need to chase revenue. So in my space, from where I am at, revenue is about what you do. And that lesson I learned the hard way. So if it doesn't make cash flow sense for me necessarily, I don't take the transaction on. And or I develop the property to make cash flow sense. So that's also, so before you even, let's take property as an example. If I walk into a property, I look at the property itself and I say, okay, what's the right use of this asset? And then after a few years of exposure, I got quite good at it. So I can instantly say, okay, this will be offices, or this can be a multi-let, or this can be a single residential family home, or whatever the case might be, or just a flip. So you get to understand that. And eventually, I do believe property is an investment. Otherwise, going into areas where you don't have any capital growth, you need to chase revenue. So in my space, from where I am, revenue is about what you do. And that lesson I learned the hard way. So if it doesn't make cash flow sense for me necessarily, I don't take the transaction on. And or I develop the property to make cash flow sense. So that's also, so before you even, let's take property as an example. If I walk into a property, I look at the property itself and I say, okay, what's the right use of this asset? And then after a few years of exposure, I got quite good at it. So I can instantly say, okay, this will be offices, or this can be a multi-let, or this can be a single residential family home, or whatever the case might be, or just a flip. So you get to understand that not your primary residence, though. I am a firm believer of, but it doesn't necessarily mean you cannot make money off it. You just need to be clever about it. So, and if it answers your question about, do I feel it's an investment? Most definitely.
Okay. And you sort of, I'm gonna challenge you a bit here, and you've got to be clever about it. What does that mean? What is being clever for the person that's starting out, the 20-something or 30-year-old that's looking to make the move, make the biggest financial decision of their life, and they're looking for some insights, or they're looking for an agent or a pearl of wisdom? What is the being clever about it?
I'm going to answer that. It's very simple. Surround yourself with the right people. By default, you've got about 5 mentors in your lifetime. It would be a good idea for you to choose them, and not just people that you like, you listen, because you learn, they rub off on you. So go out there, choose people that you like, and they will influence you enough to make the right decisions over time. Now, the thing is, I cannot say a 20-something guy earning 5,000 a month, this is what you need to do. I can holistically look at his portfolio or look at where he's currently at. I can tell him what skills he needs to invest in, because you definitely, rather with 5,000 Rand a month salary, instead of trying to acquire property or assets, invest in yourself, build up skills, so that in time, those skills will scale. A good piece of advice I got way back was when I started with my CIMA degree, I spoke to an auditor, RA, and he said to me that, Raynardt, you're doing the same amount of work effectively than what you're going to be doing if you're going to do a bit more if you go the CA route. And then if you go further, you can become an RA, and then your pay will increase significantly compared to where you're going to go at. So that model is invest in yourself, okay? And then that will scale in time. So if I've got 5 people that I mentor effectively currently, and they all came to me with basic salaries, and we got them into a space where they've got their primary residence and at least 2 other properties. But then it becomes very cash flow sensitive. You cannot go a month or 2 without having income on that property. So then you need to plan properly, and you need to invest in places that's cash flow surplus, quite, how can I say, decently cash flow surplus. So that makes it easier to make a fault or a foot fault in certain cases. And that's the kind of things, there's no right one answer. There's 1,000 different right things that can happen, but you just need the right counseling, the right mentoring and guidance at times. Again, surrounding yourself with the right people. That would be my advice for any young guy starting off.
Okay, brilliant. So before we go into a bit more market-related questions, just to give you some context around the brand and why EXP. So the AI Agent Collective. My name is Jeff Lopez. I spent 18 years in the liquor industry, and somewhere in that journey, I crossed that imaginary line, and I became addicted to alcohol. A couple of years ago, I ended up in rehab, and my life was flipped on its head. I pretty much lost everything, and I had an encounter with the Holy Spirit, and my life has changed for the better. And the real estate industry has taken me in with open arms. So back into the conversation, and I think from now, you guys can take the question, whoever sees fit, okay? Whoever's more comfortable. The South African market, in terms of real estate, in the data that I've been getting from Lightstone, it did, in the last couple of months, it looked like the registrations at the deeds office fell off a cliff. What is your view on the health of real estate in South Africa, Liezel?
So real estate is affected by a world economy, and unfortunately, we can't control that. In the beginning of the year, the predictions were that we're going to see record highs this year, and the predictions were very good. Unfortunately, the war popped up, the diesel prices increased again. Property will always remain one of the biggest investments clients will make. Always. People will always have people buying and selling, doesn't matter the economy. Life stages, some people with high interest rates can't afford higher bonds. They will have to sell. It's the snowball effect in the market, but the market has been down. Consumer confidence is starting to pick up again. It's the normal. The industry has been a roller coaster ever since, and it will always be affected by a lot of other factors, but there's always business.
Yeah.
Always business, always people buying and selling. And once the markets are tight, that's when the investors gets the opportunity to be able to purchase property at lower values because people are desperate to sell in certain cases. And that's the snowball effect that I talk about. Whatever goes up must come down, and it will go up again.
So summarizing what you just said, market is somewhat compressed at the moment.
Definitely.
So for the investors out there, if you're umming and ahhing, right time to pull the trigger, Raynardt?
Yeah, so again, Liezel actually said it. One of the rules I live by is desperate sellers. So you look at people that's in desperate need to sell, and that's where you buy your profits. Because you never sell a profit, you buy a profit. So irrespective of a market, if you get a decent property you've now said Lightstone, you pull your Lightstones, you got a value of 1.2 million or 1.5 million in area, and if you buy 40% underneath that market value, you're safe irrespective of the war happening and irrespective of diesel prices. You might not realize it now, but in 3-4 years' time when the market has shifted, you'll realize your profits. So yes, most definitely now is the time to look for deals.
Okay. If you could identify one financial behavior keeping people out of the property market, what would it be?
Lifestyle. Financing a lifestyle before purchasing your first property. That is a sad thing to
Keeping
say.
up with the Joneses.
Exactly
Yeah.
my point. And I guess there's also a bit of a form of education there that a lot of previous generations that it wasn't enforced and that you need to own your own home and all of that. But lately, that is one of the biggest thing. And the youngsters coming up are more educated, and we're seeing them coming through getting pre-qualified just after finishing university instead of purchasing the more expensive vehicle. But definitely lifestyle, financing a lifestyle instead of focusing on starting investing in a property.
I think what I read, I listened to a podcast last night by Stephen Bartlett, and he interviewed some of the world's top entrepreneurs. And what's exciting, and Raynardt, you actually brought it up. I think for any youngsters potentially watching this video, I think read, and I think you mentioned Robert Kiyosaki, and forgive me if I'm wrong. I mean, you guys can do your own research, but Robert Kiyosaki also said don't use your own money to create wealth. Use the bank's money to create wealth. And once you've built up a bit of equity, you potentially have more access to wealth. So once you get to a certain point and you've got that equity behind you, you can just keep refinancing, and then essentially other people are creating your wealth for you. So it's about making wise decisions, not blowing your cash on a Friday night in Melrose Arch. And
I think there needs to be a balance. So with the previous question, I second the fact that lifestyle creep is your biggest risk. In terms of this, you also need to live. So don't be too harsh on yourself and too disciplined. Sometimes you just need to relax and let your hair down a bit. So that also needs to happen. But in saying that, a good discipline is required. So yes, most definitely we keep on taking what's surplus, you're putting it back. Initially, it's difficult, but as soon as this vessel starts, it snowballs because your equity increases constantly. You've got a better leverage with the bank. And I think it's Robert Kiyosaki that said this effectively. If you owe the bank like 100 million, you just in debt with him. But if you owe them like 3 billion, then you're a partner. So it all depends on
that.
because people are very risk aware in terms of debt. But debt is a bad thing if you use it incorrectly. Leveraging debt to fund assets that puts more money in your pocket than what it takes out. That's where the value sits. So again, investing in your skills to get you there. Surrounding yourself with the right people getting you there. That's important. That's very important. If it wasn't that people came across my path that exposed me towards certain elements of this, I would have never known of it. So again, get yourself the right mentoring. Get yourself the right counseling. Surround yourselves with the right accountants. They need to align your financials. They need to surround yourselves with the right professionals. If it wasn't for Liezel, I wouldn't have been able to manage the bank the way I did, without a doubt. So there's value in synergy. A lot of
value in synergy. Well, there's a short right there for you. Okay, beautiful. Why is obtaining finance often significantly harder for self-employed individuals? I think you might have touched on this already, but I think if we can go a little bit deeper into that.
So yes and no. First of all, it's because of the amount of documents the bank requires. So it is a very long list of documents that we need. But at the end of the day, I always say, and you heard when I gave the training as well, a self-employed, all they need to know is that they can get up to 100% loan, given that their financials and their paperwork are in place. And that's where Raynardt comes in. And with every single self-employed client, I work very closely with the accountant. I know what credit in the bank wants to see. And that's the story that I need to give them. And once you partner with professionals like us, we're there to assist you, not only just making up the pack for the bank, but assessing your business and summarizing your business and to be able to make changes or liaise with the accountant to make the deal work. Self-employed, a lot of them don't have accountants. Unfortunately, with a self-employed, you have to pay tax to be able to get a loan. You'll be able to buy a vehicle without the right paperwork, but when it comes to a home loan, the banks are governed by the National Credit Act, and with a home loan, there's certain requirements. So self-employed, it's a tedious process, but if you've got an accountant that I can liaise with, it's very simple.
And I suppose this leads us to the more established entrepreneurs are gonna know this, because it's a key fundamental part of wealth creation. But structuring your tax appropriately.
Most definitely.
So you as an accountant will probably know, and maybe you can dovetail into your view on trust.
Okay, so I'm actually very pro trust. So let's start off. You cannot necessarily just, if you start off this journey, it's easier to buy in your property, in your personal name. It's easier to do it on a payslip. You can leverage yourself into a better position. Having a self-employed, so early on, being a self-employed is very, very difficult. If you're established, different set of rules. But I've now had numerous clients come to me, not just for compliance, but literally for advice in terms of asset protection, protecting against death, third parties, and or divorces. So trusts are very powerful vessels in getting that done right. But then you need to align with your strategy. So your intention before you start off with your decisions is very important. Like I myself, I do compliance. We do it quite well. I've got a very strong team, very strong back office that runs a very decent sized business, I believe, and does it effectively. But if a client comes to me and I need to consult and I need to move what he already owns and he bought it in the wrong entities, it's very expensive to redo it. So it's better to get it done from start. So consulting the right person, getting your structure set up correctly, and then leveraging out of there is important. So yeah, your question was my thoughts on trusts. Trust is very expensive in terms of tax and so forth, but there's ways and means around it. There's a lot of benefit that the Tax Act gives us when it comes to things like the flow through a trust, and structuring your properties correctly can alleviate a lot of the tax pressure, but it needs to be done by your tax professional, aligned with your strategy, aligned with, and what I've discovered is that if you don't have a trusted personal relationship with your professional helping you, don't do it. Just start establishing those relationships early on. It's very, very important. I actually want to make a comment on that. I was learned at a very, very early age, there's a few people you need in your life. One is you need an accountant if you go into business. You need a pastor to pray for you if you go into business. And you need a doctor to look after your heart. So those are the three things that's super important.
I just want to elaborate on that, Jeff. So what Raynardt mentioned earlier I had a self-employed client that moved his primary residence from his personal name into his business name so that we could get some equity, to access some equity. So that move could have been done. We could have raised the equity in his personal name only. But because he had an idea of what he wanted to do, there were costs involved to move it back into the entity name. By the time it was registered in the entity name, he phoned me and he said, Liezel, I've got 5 million rand. How do I invest? And I said to him, whoa, let's break it down. What is your intention? Where do you want to go? And that is when I brought Raynardt in to say, let's consult with the client. This guy wants to build wealth through property. He's got 5 million rand. He wanted to invest in a commercial property only with the 5 million. And I think at the moment with the current structure, with that existing 5 million in cash flow, we'll be able to access about 20 million rand in assets that we're going to finance, just by planning, understanding the client's needs and intention, and structuring it in different entities with the shares leading back to the family trust. And that is our working, our alliance, not only on a personal level, but became for those business owners, those entrepreneurs, people that's got money, that's got equity, but they don't know how to go forward with it and how to make that equity work as a cash flow positive investment.
Yeah. Or they could perhaps not have the time or the inclination. But I think maybe it's a great angle for us to explore. I've got it as a further point there. So it's one of my goals in the foreseeable future to set up like really high level buying groups, to include people like yourself within my network, my very humble network. I know about 10, 15 CEOs, high net worth individuals. Put all those people in a room, but then I mean, I think in a space like that, opportunities just come up.
They just roll, yeah.
So networking, relationships, critically important as well. And I suppose I'm gonna lean in with a question there. Would you mind being part of my buying group?
No, most definitely.
Yeah. Thank you, Raynardt. Look at that.
So again, if it forms part of the rules and it forms part of the
100%.
strategy, 100%.
Yeah, if it works for you,
what the lessons I've learned is, if you've got a plan, don't deviate. You can make adjustments, but don't deviate. So yeah, I've got, I think, like 24 rules that I've jotted down, and I've lived by them for the last 3 years. I've had to adjust them a few times, but most definitely I'll form part of a group of, even if it's just people rub off against one another. So even if it's just learning what they already know. In one lifetime, actually, Liezel mentioned it earlier, in one lifetime you can't learn everything.
Well, I think what is another very important marketing tool for real estate agents, and we touched on it on our coffee date. Liezel was having our buyers dinners or buyers interaction events, again, having key stakeholders at these sessions. But that's a very important tool, with the complexities around canvassing. And let's be frank, nobody loves a cold call, right? But having a group of key stakeholders or key investors at your fingertips is going to be beneficial for any estate agent. So that's one of the key levers that I want to.
That's a very powerful network. If again, if it wasn't for the people I surrounded myself with, I wouldn't have been able to do what I did. No chance. So you do 100%. You need to do what you're doing.
Brilliant. Looking at risk elements, how does Betterbonds compare to traditional banking? Or do they view risk slightly differently?
Well, remember, Jeff, we act on behalf of the bank. So the risk profile is not coming from Betterbonds' point of view.
Okay.
I deal with ABSA, FNB, Nedbank, Standard, Investec. So each bank has got a different risk profile. And that is ideal for us when it comes to the home loan industry, because as soon as I only need one bond approval for a deal to go through. So as soon as one bank caters more for the higher risk department, or, the higher risk clients, then we get one approval from those institutions. Risk differs from each bank. And with a home loan, the higher the risk, the higher the rate. The higher the risk, the lower the percentage loan. So it's all about risk, and each bank has got a different appetite for that. And that's where I come in with a pre-qualification, where I can determine a client's risk prior to starting the house hunting process. So I can determine their risk, their exact buying power, to put the client at ease and comfortable to say, you can afford this amount a month, make sure that you are aware of all the costs involved, and we assist them in guiding them in that way.
What is your view on AI and how it's affecting the world in its current form? So this I'm asking you, this is your personal views?
It's exciting, but scary at the same time.
100%.
If we go back 20 years and we look at how schools functioned, if you had a maths test, you couldn't take your calculator with. In today's world, you take your calculator with if you go for a maths test. So again, that was technology that frightened people. Now AI is technology that frightens people. But a calculator, I use it daily. So it all depends on, and I do believe that if you don't use it and learn to use it, you're going to be left behind, because it has simplified a lot of the data work that we have to do. It's eliminated the amount of time me and my team have to spend on certain things. It has streamlined a lot of processes in-house in all the different segments that I have invested in. And I do believe it can go even further at times. It is going to cost jobs, unfortunately. But I do also think that, and this is an approach I got from a very high-end individual in my world, and he said to me that it's only going to cost you a job if you don't learn to use it.
Absolutely.
And I do believe that getting on board with it, understanding it quite well, giving it its right rules and exposure, you will go far. There's obviously an amount of risk associated with the knowledge that's publicly based. So that frightens me a lot. But for the rest of it, I do believe it will help if you use it correctly.
Yeah, absolutely. So you landed something so significant there, and I think it's key. So AI is happening regardless of whether you embrace it or not. And an industry professional, John Sinai, I watched some of his podcasts, and he actually painted it in a way, and it goes something like this. So the smartest people in the world have an IQ of about 160. So if you look at Albert Einstein, Elon Musk, Steve Jobs, AI has the ability to double its IQ every 6 months. So it's humanly impossible to keep up with AI. And I agree wholeheartedly with what Liezel said there. It will never replace the human element and the relationship element in business, because I think those are fundamental cornerstones, but it will enhance the productivity and efficiency. even for me as an estate agent, where it used to take me a couple of hours to design a render or a pamphlet or an advert or for meta ads, it now takes me the time it takes to type the prompt, right? And it spits out this incredible finished product, even if you're on the free version of the AI. That's the portion of AI that I'm trying to embrace, is to make myself more efficient and access and processing of data. So if you, for example, phone me and you want a Lightstone report analyzed and put back to you within the half hour, I can do that easily. I plug it into ChatGPT or whichever format I'm using, and you'll have a very comprehensive market-related report. The marketing automation, you can schedule adverts and customer communication. It's all automated through platforms like NetN and ChatGPT. So yeah, and it's an exciting space, scary for some, but I think you landed it well. If you're not prepared to embrace it, you're going to be left behind.
It just shortens the amount of time that I need to take to make a decision. Because one of the lessons I've learned is how quickly you can make a decision and stick by it also affects your growth capacity and or how successful you become. So I'm spending a lot of money on developing my own in-house system, just to give you a bit of
Amazing.
background.
Liezel, if you could change one thing about how South Africans think about money and property, what would it be?
Is that every person that earns an income can become a homeowner. And that's the reality to it. I mean, we've got First Home Finance, which is the government subsidy, but we are waiting new funding. But if you're earning 3,500 Rand prior to the funding that stopped, that you could get 169,000 Rand from government for free to assist you in the purchase of a property. So I've assisted domestic workers to purchase a flat of 180,000 Rand. Anyone that earns an income can own a property. If you ever doubted that, that's why we're there, is to reach out. But home ownership is a reality that's available to anyone in South Africa. And we can guide you and assist you, if you don't have a good credit score, how to go about to build a good credit score. And myself and my team, we pride ourselves in that if a client comes across our table that's got defaults or judgments or is currently under debt review, we assist them to equip them with the tools and the knowledge how to go about to fix their profiles to be able to become a homeowner. I did a podcast on Monday and they asked me, what was one of your best experiences? Just in the beginning of January, we got a bond approval for a client that I started coaching 10 years ago. He was liquidated and insolvent at that stage. 10 years later, he became a homeowner at the age of 62.
Amazing.
It's doable.
And your side, Raynardt, what are some of the fundamental errors people are making with their funds?
Fundamental errors, lifestyle creep. Improving lifestyle before investing. So my model is I want to invest into passive income. So because of my day-to-day work, if I don't spend time, I don't make money. So my business is very labor intensive. So I'm trying to diversify and getting to a space of passive income. So that's just in general. So as soon as that funds that's generated monthly is enough for me to live, I don't have the pressure of the day-to-day anymore. So in my world, it's for freedom. But it all depends on, again, your intention. And one of the questions that I've asked all my mentors is, when is enough enough? And everybody needs to ask that themselves. But the short in my world is that with regards to a fundamental error, those small decisions compound over time. So having lesser now, sacrificing 5 years now in terms of lifestyle improvements and reinvesting that would give you way more leverage in time. It's almost, and I want to use this idea that we overestimate what we can do in a year, but we way underestimate what we can do in 10. It's almost that our perspective is wrong. Our awareness is shortened. Our sight's incorrect for some reason. So we need people to help us gauge that. So biggest error anybody can make is improving lifestyle early. Without a doubt.
All right, brilliant. Liezel and Raynardt, I'm going to ask you 2 questions that are going to be quite deep and profound, but we really want to get a sense of who you are as people, not just industry professionals. I really thank you for your insights and knowledge about the real estate landscape, access to funds and wealth for that matter. But this is more about you, what makes you, you. And I think that's what people really want to hear. And this is the value. So Liezel, what are your 3 core business values and principle that you live your life by?
Got a favorite saying, if it's to be, it's up to me.
Okay.
Doesn't matter where you find yourself within which industry, which business, what support you've got. I need to get up in the morning and go make it myself. So I believe in consistency, and that if I want to achieve something in life, it's my mindset. It's the way I'm going to operate, and the way I'm going to be consistent to achieve my goals. Your discipline is the thing that carries you when everything else fails. I'm a firm believer. Now I'm going to get emotional. In Afrikaans, you've got a saying, lig jou ken en ken jou lig. I am where I am today by God's grace, and loyalty, integrity, transparency, values, that's one thing that I carry throughout my business with my team, my staff, our clients, our agents. And then the last thing, my late dad used to say, learn from the mistakes of others because you'll never grow old enough to make them yourself. Is to have a spirit, to be able to be open to learn every day, and to take and see and observe what everyone else is experiencing, and to apply it to yourself, and to say, whatever I can learn from anyone else, I'll take, and to improve 1% per day. Try and be better 1% than yesterday.
That was beautiful. Thank you for being so vulnerable, and thank you for sharing your insights and your vision and the way you live your life. Really nice to have you. Raynardt, before we close, looking forward to hearing your wisdom, brother.
So it's based on our relationship with our Creator that we're saved. So why would the relationship with other people be to a lesser value? So relationships, very important. I seldomly break a relationship. I invest a lot of my time into it. That's the first principle that I live by. The second one is contribute more than what you take. So give more, take less. And I actually saw that on Dr. Phil one day, and it just stuck with me. I lived by it, like, seriously, because I don't want to be a parasite. I actually want to contribute more than what I take, and that's a serious value that I live by. The last thing, it's so difficult to just get everything to 3, but having a discipline for your daily work, for your health, having a decent discipline to clear your mind, getting your sleep ready, because you cannot drive 300 kilometers an hour with a Ferrari that uses petrol and put diesel in it. You cannot do that. You need to fuel your body, you need to fuel your soul and your mind. You need to exercise, you need to have the right sleep, the right supplements, the right food in your body. And that makes you efficient and gives you longevity. So investing again in yourself, even if it's your health. So relationships, giving back, and discipline. Those are the 3 things I would say.
Beautiful. So we spoke about it a little bit off air, but one of my mentors is Stephen Bartlett. He runs the podcast Diary of a CEO. I'm going to use, hopefully, Steve, one day you'll see this and we can invite you. I could have the honor of interviewing you. But until then, I'm going to copy one of his sort of methods. And on the AI Agent Collective, we want to start a tradition where our guests are going to write a note in the diary over there. Jot down your 3 core values, but then also please leave a question for our next guest. And it can be entirely up to you. There's absolutely no limits. It can be about life, business, faith. And as long as it's thought-provoking and it's going to make a meaningful difference, I would really appreciate that. So I'll leave that up to you. It's going to remain anonymous, and I'll only look at it when the next guest joins us. So as we close off, investment into property remains one of the biggest jumps into wealth creation. Real estate is a useful mechanism for that. Myself, Jeff Lopez, at the AI Agent Collective, and EXP. I'll look after your biggest investments decision, like I look after my own money, and you can trust in us. EXP, global disruptors in the real estate industry. We look forward to great things here on this channel. To Liezel and Raynardt, a final close. It was an incredible journey getting to know you guys, getting to hear the insights, and getting to hear, most importantly, that access to funds is not as hard as it's made out to be. I think that's, part of the golden thread of what we heard today. So like I said, if you want to get involved, or if you want to reach out, my AI tools are linked down below if you want to get involved with our buyers group, and if you want to reach out to Liezel to get her and her team to get working on some funds for you, get in touch. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We'll see you again soon.